Shakespeare watched his only son die at 11 years old. A few years later, he wrote his most famous play and named the lead character after his son, his dead son. Now, was that an act of love, a father keeping his son alive the only way he knew how? Or did he take the most private, the most devastating thing that ever happened to his family and turn it into art, into product, into legacy for himself? That's not a rhetorical question. I genuinely don't know the answer. And I've been thinking about it since I finished Maggie O'Farrell's novel Hamnet, which, if you haven't read it, I'm about to make you need to. So let's get into it. There will be spoilers. Listen at your own risk. So here's what we actually know about the real Hamnet, Shakespeare. He was born in 1585, twin to a sister named Judith. He died in 1596, aged 11, cause unknown, and that is it. That is everything that we know. There's no portrait, no account of his personality, no record of what he meant to his father. He is a footnote in the biography of the most written about writer in human history. And Maggie O'Farrell looked at that footnote and asked, what if we put him at the center of it all? But here's the move that sets the whole novel up. And you need to understand this before anything else. Shakespeare is never mentioned in the book. Not once. He is either the Latin tutor, or the father, or the husband, or that dude. Okay, the last one was my embellishment, but you get it. A man so famous that his name has become almost synonymous with literature itself. And O'Farrell just removes it, leaves it out, refuses it. Why does that matter? Because it immediately tells you whose story this is. It's not Shakespeare's. It's theirs. His wife Agnes's. His son Hamnet's. The people history forgot because they were standing next to someone history decided to remember. The novel is building from its very first page toward one moment, one scene. And it's the one where Agnes, sitting in a theater, watching a play she knows nothing about. We'll get there, but first, O'Farrell has to make you understand what was lost. So there's a sequence in the middle of this novel that I keep thinking about. O'Farrell traces the origin of the plague, the specific outbreak that will eventually kill Hamnet, backwards and forwards through time. She starts with a glass case on a ship, inside the case a rare exotic bird, and on the bird a flea, and inside the flea the sickness. And she follows that flea off the bird, onto a monkey, off the monkey, into a fabric, through a port, onto a cart, into a town, through a door, up a staircase, into a sleeve. She tracks it like a thriller, continent by continent, host by host, until it arrives completely inevitably at a specific house in a specific town, in the body of a specific child. It's one of the most extraordinary pieces of writing I have encountered. It does something very specific emotionally. It makes Hamnet's death feel inevitable, cosmically inevitable even. Like the entire world, trade routes, migration, human greed for rare and beautiful things, was all conspiring across decades to arrive at this one boy in this one yard, calling his sister's name. Why does O'Farrell do that? I think because... why does she do that? I think because it sets up the impossible weight of what comes after. If your child's death was random, just bad luck, wrong place, right? Then grief is one thing. Maybe it can be digestible. But if it feels written into the fabric of the world, predetermined, then what do you do with that? How do you metabolize something that epic? The father's answer, it turns out, is that you write a play. Agnes and the father, Shakespeare, grieve in completely opposite ways, and O'Farrell is very deliberate about this. Agnes grieves outwardly. She's physical, animalistic, present in her loss. She dismantles herself. She redesigns the garden. At one point, she goes looking for Hamnet almost rationally, as if the world has simply misplaced him. And she will obviously be the one to find him. Her grief has no performance in it. It's not for anyone else. It is entirely hers. The father goes to London. That's it. He has work. He's got to go do it. He has a company. He has... The novel makes you feel an entire other life that his grief can fold itself into or hide inside. And you're not sure reading it whether O'Farrell thinks he's coping or escaping. She's too great of a writer to just give that away. So, but here's my thing, is that I get that William Shakespeare is processing, okay? And I get it that it's in his own way, in his own time, and in his own language that he is processing. And a few years later, 1600, 1601, somewhere in that ballpark, he writes Hamlet, named unmistakably after his dead son. Now, O'Farrell goes into this in the beginning of the book, where she tells you that Hamlet and Hamnet were essentially the same name at the time. So the names are the same. Hamnet and Hamlet, I know it's a difference of one letter, but it is not ambiguous. Like this thing that she is implying is very clear. So the question then becomes, what exactly is Shakespeare doing writing this play? And now this is the scene that the entire novel exists to build toward. Like, Agnes comes to London. Someone takes her to the theater. She doesn't know what's playing. She sits down, and then an actor walks onto the stage and calls out a name. It's her son's name. And O'Farrell writes what happens to Agnes in that moment with extraordinary precision. It isn't simple. It isn't just pain. There's something else in it. She recognizes it. Almost like her son has been caught, held, like the father has reached into the past and grabbed Hamnet before he could disappear completely. And almost pinned him here in this story where he cannot die again because he will be performed forever. And maybe Agnes couldn't find him, but Shakespeare definitely tried to and may have succeeded. Agnes feels, and this is where the novel is the most careful, the most deliberate, that her son has been seen, that the father looked at their boy and looked at his loss and made something that would outlast both of them. And that reading is genuinely moving. That reading makes the play an act of profound love. But there's another reading sitting right next to it, and I can't let go of it. Hamlet is not Hamnet. The character is a prince. He's a philosophical, verbose, paralyzed by thought. He is not a specific 11-year-old boy in Stratford who liked to follow his mother around the garden. Shakespeare took his son's name and his son's death and then wrote himself. He wrote his own grief, his own guilt, his own paralysis. So whose memorial is it really? Is Hamlet a monument to a lost child? Or is it a monument to a father's feelings about a lost child, which is a very different thing? And here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Agnes never consented to this. Hamnet never consented to this. The most private catastrophe of their family's life became one of the most famous plays ever written, performed by strangers, watched by strangers, owned eventually by the whole world. He made their grief into content, into product, into the thing he is remembered for. And is he allowed to do that? Was he allowed to do that? I want to zoom out for a second because I don't think this question belongs only to Shakespeare. I think about Joan Didion writing The Year of Magical Thinking, a book-length excavation of her husband's sudden death. Think about Nick Cave making Skeleton Tree, an album he was recording when his son died and finished anyway and released into the world. Think about C.S. Lewis writing A Grief Observed after his wife died. So raw, he originally published it under a fake name. Every single one of them made art from the worst thing that happened to them, and every single one of them at some point must have asked, am I honoring this person or am I feeding off them? Does making something beautiful from grief redeem the grief? Does it aestheticize it, make it pretty, turn it into something that serves you, that people admire you for, while the person who's actually gone stays gone? I don't think there's a clean answer. I think it's both, always at the same time. The making is real. The love inside the making is real. And so is the fact that the artist is the one who survives and benefits and gets to shape how the story is told. Agnes gets to feel her son was caught and held. She also has no say in what he was turned into. And both things are true. So let's come back to where we started. Shakespeare watched his son die, and then he wrote Hamlet. I said at the beginning I didn't know whether that was an act of love or a kind of theft. Having thought about it for the length of this video, I think it's neither. Or maybe it's both. I think it's what happens when a person who processes the world through language encounters something that language can barely hold. He did the one thing he knew how to do, and it cost Agnes something she was never asked if she was willing to give. Maybe the question isn't whether he was right or wrong to write it. Maybe the question is, what else was he supposed to do with it? I want to know what you think, especially if you have ever made something, a song, a poem, a video, anything, out of something painful. Did it feel like you were honoring it? Or did it feel like you were using it? Tell me more. I'll be here. And thank you so much for listening this far, and good night.